10 ways to cultivate fearlessness. Boy, imagine if you were fearless. You just didn't care. Well, one of the things I've noticed about the most successful people in my business is they are fearless. They just go after it. Of course, they care what people think to an extent, but not a very big extent. And they just go after it. They don't care. They're not worried about how they're perceived. They just want to be successful. They want to help their clients, but they're fearless. Are you fearless? Well, if you want to get big, you want to make big money, you better get fearless. At age 75, actor Henry Fonda was still throwing up before getting on stage. How is it that this legend, with a 50-year career starring opposite Betty Davis, Lucille Ball, and Katharine Hepburn, was still afraid of doing his job? Author Stephen Pressfield warned that for the creative, this fear never goes away. The warrior and the artist live by the same code of necessity, which dictates that the battle must be fought anew every day. And that's true for all of us. What a great image, right? To feel the fear each day and valiantly move forward. In other words, to feel the fear and do it anyways. That's what all winners do. They feel it. I think that's crazy. Don't get me wrong. Courage is an essential skill while you're faking it until you make it. But I don't want to live the rest of my days feeling like I'm going to lose my lunch. Let's take off the training wheels. What's courage got to do with it? There are a few things you should fear. Running away from an axe murderer is a winning strategy, but true danger is rare today. You're likely more afraid of garden variety catastrophes like failing to make the rent or screwing up your kids or hearing somebody tell you no. Some mornings it takes courage just to get out of bed. It takes courage to stand up to a bully, to talk to that beautiful guy or gal at the bookstore, and to step into a pitch meeting. Courage allows us to do it anyway. But I don't want to be proving my bravery every time I get on the phone with a client. I would much rather transcend my fears. And you know what? With many I have. As a teenager, I was scared to death of talking to girls. Now I get joy talking to anyone. Fears, we can beat them. Why we fear what we fear. Jimmy was a bacterium who lived millions of years ago who was smart enough to run away from bigger bacteria before becoming dinner. He was lucky enough to find a real sweet lady bacterium and pass that genius behavior on to his kids. You are a direct descendant of Jimmy, 500 million generations removed. Grandpa Jimmy gave you life, but he also taught you fear. As complex life evolved, so did our fears and responses. Birds learned to flap away from loud noises, and monkeys mastered swinging in trees to thumb their noses at predators. Fear gets us a harsh rap with the Self-Help Club, but let's acknowledge that if our ancestors had no fear, they'd have tried to hug a mountain lion. Some fears are still useful, the only two we're born with are falling and loud noises. This helps us avoid cliffs and go inside and make hot cocoa in a thunderstorm. Most fears are not so relevant today. We're afraid of looking stupid. That's the biggest fear I've noticed in training thousands of people. The fear of looking stupid, a fear of worrying what someone else might think about them. And we seek to conform because for early humans, being part of a tribe was the only way to survive and make babies. At that time, there were like 3 eligible bachelorettes in the tribe. But in a modern city of, say, 5 million people, getting rejected by one woman at the bar won't hopelessly tarnish your reputation and prevent you from mating, even though it seems like your stomach is trying to escape via your knees. Unfortunately, evolution hasn't caught up with this whole fancy civilization thing. Thankfully, it has furnished us with this oddly large, rational brain that can override our lower fear-based programming. Put fear in the back seat. Eat, Pray, Love author Elizabeth Gilbert has a healthy relationship with fear. She thanks it for keeping her safe and alive in dangerous situations. She allows us to have a seat in the car, but not to drive the car. She puts fear in the back seat like a whiny baby that it is. You can have the same relationship with your fear, and below I'll show you 10 ways how. Consider your first day on your first job. You probably had to pluck up your courage just to get out the door. Then think about how you felt after 6 months on the job. Scared? Probably not. In fact, you might even be darn good at what you do. You might even enjoy it. With enough time, the fear disappears. Courage is no longer required. you become fearless. You've seen videos of people picking up tarantulas or someone with a boa constrictor casually draped around his neck. These people aren't practicing courage. They've progressed to fearlessness. Look, you'll never banish fears from every corner of your mind, but why not strive to backseat most of them? Here's how. 10 ways to cultivate fearlessness. 1, know what keeps you up at night. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Go out into the woods with a bow and arrow, pick a target, blindfold yourself, and shoot. Did you hit the mark? Of course not. You can't hit a target that you can't see. If you want to overcome your fears, you need to know them. Oh, you're not afraid of anything. If you believe that, then you're likely not aware that judgmentalism, anger, and many negative emotions and negative emotional habits usually mask fear. The first step in this journey into fearlessness is to look inside and ask what keeps you up at night. 2, face the fear head on. Let difficulties know that you too are difficult. APG Abdul Kalam. Knowing your enemy is step 1, but many who know their hang-ups go to great lengths to avoid them. Psychologists have cataloged many strategies to be used to avoid our fears. Some greatest hits. Avoidance takes place when we tell friends, I'm just tired today, on Saturday night to avoid our ex and the open wounds of that betrayal. Repression happens when our brains cause us to bury traumatic experiences like physical abuse. Projection occurs when we complain about another's behavior only to deflect from the same flaw in ourselves. We see that a lot. Anxiety develops when we try to control every aspect of our lives instead of dealing with root issues. In all cases, the solution is the same. To bring that fear into the light, face it head on. 3, get clear on your why. If you have a very clear vision of where you want to go, then the rest of it is much easier. Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's really true. I had a crystal clear vision of how I wanted my life to end up, the way I wanted to live, where I wanted to live, how I wanted to travel, what kind of cars I wanted to own, what kind of homes I wanted to possess. I knew exactly how I wanted my life to play out. And I built a business that has allowed me to do that. The whole point of building that business was to create that life that I now currently have. When we have rock solid reason for tackling the challenge, and when that motivation is stronger than your fear, in other words, I hated rejection, but I wanted to be successful much more than I wanted to be comfortable and avoid rejection. So when you have that, when your motivation is stronger than your fear, fear goes into hiding. Imagine you hate public speaking, but you need to pitch a room full of investors and land $1 million contract. Now imagine that your child needed $1 million operation to survive. Would you give the best NAM presentation of your life? You bet. And I'd wager that your speaking fear would vanish. When you want something as bad as air, fear magically takes a hike. The problem is most people don't really know what they want. They're not clear about it. I'm just telling you, you better get clear about it or you're going to struggle for a long time. Number 4, spend time with fearless people. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Jim Rohn said that. Jim Rohn's words have been repeated 1,000 times, and they're worth saying again because this point is critical to your ultimate level of success. If you want to overcome a fear of flying, spend time in a cockpit. To get over scary rejection, hang out with friends who get electrified by talking to 100 strangers a day. Babies learn by watching. We don't grow out of this when we age. When someone models fearlessness, our brain takes note. Chill out, brain. Observation pulls into play. Mirror, neurons, cells that fire when we watch others. Our brains learn by mental rehearsal. So when you want to overcome a fear, go watch someone do what you fear the way a cat casually plays with a mouse. Number 5, watch videos of people doing what scares you. 1 minute of video is worth 1.8 million words. Forrester Research. Let me repeat that. 1 minute of video is worth 1.8 million words. Wow. Watch video of people doing what it is you want to do. We can watch people in real life, but we can also become fearless. Badass. from the comfort of our own iPad screens. If you have a phobia of spiders, let's say you can get on YouTube and dive into some videos of people handling spiders. Will this be excruciating? Definitely at first, and yes, it will require courage to even type spiders into the search. Push through the initial discomfort, sit with it, breathe. A video can't harm you. After a while, your brain and body will realize there's nothing to fear, and you won't need courage to deal with spiders. You'll be fearless with them. A word of caution, traumas can be severe, and some should only be approached with a skilled therapist. 6, practice worst-case scenario thinking. Nothing should ever be unexpected by us. Is there anything that fortune won't knock off its high horse if it pleases her? Seneca. How do you get over a fear of the worst happening? Rehearse the worst. The Stoics had a practice, premeditatio malorium, the premeditation of evils. It works by imagining all the terrible stuff that might happen to you so you can prepare for it. Why spook yourself like this? Isn't it true that 99% of what we worry about never comes to pass? Yes. I'm not suggesting you ruminate on these potential calamities and let constant worry sap your energy. Instead, calmly prepare for the worst with a time limit on worrying. Habits expert Neil Fiore calls this the work of worrying. Worrying is valuable because it prepares us for danger. If you're fearful of something, sit down, write down your fears, and come up with a plan to deal with any worst-case scenarios. When you've cut calamities off at the past, you can let go of your fears about them, and you'll redirect your focus and power to the task at hand. Number 7, develop a growth mindset. This is huge. I don't think they talk about her, but Carol Dweck, Carol Dweck wrote a book about mindset and growth mindset. You need to read that book. It's a really fantastic book. If you can find a path with no obstacles, it probably doesn't lead anywhere. Frank A. Clark. Isn't it amazing the lengths some of our coworkers go to in order to avoid extra responsibility? In the time they spend complaining, they could, actually finish the work. When researcher Carol Dweck gave children a problem to solve, most buckled and bellyached, but some salivated at the difficult challenge. Why? She found that the eager ones had something called a growth mindset, an understanding that failure is a necessary step on the road to mastery. These kids' curiosity overpowered their fear of embarrassment. Cultivating a growth mindset is a miracle way to overcome any fear. When the obstacle is a way to become our higher selves, we start to eat obstacles for breakfast and ask for seconds. Recently, I've gone crazy by actually giving thanks daily for my biggest challenges. I relish the role they play in creating the person I am becoming. When we live a growth mindset, fear does not exist. One of the things, the first time I spoke to a group of people, this was a long time, this was like in 1984. So it's 30-something years ago. And I've always been a shy person. I was very shy back then, introverted. I would go to a family event. I'd be in the corner reading a book while everybody's, talking to each other. But so I had won the opportunity to speak at this meeting. I think there were about 60 people there, more or less, maybe 70 people there. I'd never spoken to any group of people. I was in sales, but it was always one-on-one, or I was speaking to my sales. I used to manage jewelry stores, so I used to speak to I had 5 or 6 salespeople, but never like this, where there was like a bunch of people. So I'm speaking at this thing, and I was terrible. I was so nervous. I'm sweating profusely, my lips, shivering, quaking, and I just kept on transposing my speech, and it was a mess anyways. And my wife was there, and she said, I'm never going to go to another meeting where you're speaking. You embarrassed me so much. And but what happened is I had brought 12 guests to this meeting because I was trying to recruit them into my business. I ended up recruiting all 12 of them. They must have said, well, heck, if Hector can be successful at this, I surely can do it, because I was so bad. And I had, I didn't realize I had a growth mindset, but I just figured, I said, well, I was terrible. But if I keep doing this, I can't keep being terrible. Eventually, at some point, I've got to improve. So I'm just going to keep putting myself out there and keep doing it until I get better. And then I'm going to do the work to get better. and really master the material and become more confident. And that's what I did. And, since then, I've spoken to literally in arenas with 50,000 people multiple times. And of course, I was a little nervous, but I actually really enjoyed it. And I've enjoyed it. I speak to large groups of people, thousands of people all the time. And today, I don't feel that way anymore. Obviously, I know what I'm talking about. I enjoy the process. I realize that I know more about what I'm talking about than the people in the audience. And I just let it rip, right? And I don't worry about what people think about me because it doesn't really matter. And that's something I had to learn how to do. Any of you could learn that. You just have to have a growth mindset to do that. Be grateful. I understood how a man who has nothing left in this world still may know bliss, be it only for a brief moment. Viktor Frankl. Author and concentration camp survivor, Viktor Frankl recalled the morning that he and fellow prisoners were forced to march in the icy wind through puddles to a day of ditch digging. In the midst of despair, he thought of his wife, heard her voice, and saw her smile. She had nothing left in the world, yet was overcome by love and appreciation for her image. He had nothing left, obviously. Feeling grateful, his despair not only left, but he felt blissful, fulfilled. This is because it's impossible to feel fear, anger, frustration, or any negative emotion when our minds and hearts are already full up with gratitude. Can't do both at the same time. Make even 5 minutes daily to feel it, and fear gets shut outside. I think that's really powerful. Be grateful. Be grateful for what you have, and be grateful for the opportunity to make changes on a daily basis to improve what you have. Number 9, be public. What happens when people open their hearts? They get better. Haruki Murakami. For tens of thousands of years, humans needed the tribe to survive. To be cast out might get you eaten by a narwhal or starved to death. No wonder then that one of our largest fears is to be shunned. It's why so many of us sadly adopt a fixed mindset that places looking good above growth. We completely transcend fear of being found out by sharing everything always, by being vulnerable. Rapper Childish Gambino weaves a great story about a bus ride back from summer camp when he professed his love to a girl and she blabbed it to everyone. So I learned to cut out the middleman, make it all for everybody, always, he says. Everybody can turn around and tell everybody. Everybody already knows. I told them. It's a brilliant way to deal with the fear of being found out. Beat them to the punch. Share your fears with the world. Be vulnerable, and the truth can't hurt you anymore. And finally, number 10, do your research. Ignorance is always afraid of change. Jawaharlal Nehru, I don't know if I pronounced that right, it's quite a name. We fear what we don't understand. Hardcore bigots have the least exposure to other people, to the people they judge. Politics is polarized because neither side talks to the other. We fail to apply for a new job or put up our hand or speak in public, try weird food or visit exotic places because the unknowns might lead to danger. But most fear is flimsy when we look at it up close. Do a bit of Googling, and we find out that we can fund a business for 5% of what we imagine, that we're overqualified for the role, or that broccoli does in fact taste delicious. Who knew? Knowledge is the antidote to fear. Yes, you can approach life as a never-ending labors of Hercules to be fought and courageously, but me, I'd rather not get sick every time I have to get up on stage. I know of at least 10 ways to overcome fear, and now so do you. Set yourself on the path of fearlessness and watch your life start to flow. I'd love to know what keeps you up at night and how you're working to sleep better.